Hello and welcome to Wildwestfaces. Today's episode talks about the time when two men and one of their wives decided to leave Deadwood and try to meet up with the closest wagon train heading west. Well, unfortunately, they never made it. An eyewitness account details the skirmish that occurred between them and some Indians and the horrible atrocities that they endured. We hope you'll enjoy this story here on Wild West Faces.
Bear Butte, or Bear Mountain, known as Mato Paha to the Lakota Indians, stands proudly jutting up from the surrounding prairie, a sacred site to the Lakota. It was also used as a place to observe the world around them due to its summit standing at 4,400 feet, and today you can view 4 states from it. But as useful as it was to the Indians, it was also a huge visual beacon to the white men arriving to mine gold in the Black Hills. The Indians watched every day from this vantage point and saw the trickle of the invaders turn into a river of men, wagons, and horses. The Deadwood to Bismarck Trail ran close by and could easily be seen from this vantage point. Many of the new arrivals came by wagons. Most were dirt poor and were trying by any means possible, however dangerous, to support their families. Most who made the dangerous trip were bitterly disappointed when they arrived in Deadwood because the best claims had already been taken, and what was left could scarcely support them. Many of the men turned to any means they could to survive, and as a result, the town became a hotbed of crime and murder. The best claims were paying out great riches of gold, and of course, this caused no end of trouble for all concerned, as keeping the gold and claims safe was a never-ending battle. This climate of turmoil was just too much to bear for most of the decent folks, no matter how poor and desperate they were. 3 members of one family left Deadwood on July 17, 1877, to escape this madness. They were the Wagnes brothers and one of their wives. They headed off in their wagon along the trail towards Bismarck to join a wagon train preparing to leave from there, but the family of 3 never made it. A newspaper report gives an account of what happened. The most diabolical outrage as yet come to light was perpetrated yesterday about 3 p.m. at a point near Butte, midway between Crook City and Belforche, on the Bismarck Road. A wagon drawn by a yoke of oxen and carrying 2 men and a woman with their effects left Deadwood Monday morning on their way to Bismarck. They camped on the Centennial Prairie Monday night, and on yesterday morning made their way through Crook City. An eyewitness who was cutting hay within a quarter of a mile of the massacre tells how it occurred. He says that hearing a succession of rapid shots fired a short distance from where he was cutting hay, he got up on a high timbered bluff and saw about 20 Indians engaged in a fight with the 2 men and a woman occupying the ox train. He thinks there were about 50 shots exchanged when the firing ceased. He, for his own safety, secreted himself in a hiding place, and he stayed there until he heard the welcoming rattle of the Bismarck stage. When he hailed it, he got aboard and rode to where the train of Mr. May was encamped. From one of the passengers on the stage, we gather the following facts as to the massacre. The stage driver, when cresting the top of a knoll on the road, perceived a wagon about a quarter of a mile ahead, standing a short distance off the road. Driving up to it, all on board were horrified upon seeing 3 dead bodies scattered about, the wagon partly upset, and its contents scattered over the prairie. One of the oxen was already dead from bullet wounds, and its mate was bleeding to death from the same cause. The body of the unfortunate woman was laying on the ground about 10 feet from the wagon. Her clothing had been rolled up under her shoulders, leaving the limbs and body exposed. An ox yoke had been placed between her limbs so that the latter were spread out to their greatest extremity, and the gad, a long stick with a sharp iron prong used for driving oxen, was driven up into her body. Both her ears were cut off, her head scalped from ear to ear. The body bore evidence of being otherwise brutally and fiendishly mutilated. Parts of the entrails protruded, and it seemed as if she had received either bullet or other wounds on her breasts. The 2 men were both scalped and had their ears cut off as well. Now, on this stagecoach that beheld this spectacle, besides the driver, there were only 3 passengers on the coach, and it became a serious question whether to turn the stage and go back to the train they had passed 2 miles back, or proceed on their journey. Well, they finally decided to go on. The passengers, fearing that the Indians might be watching them, and not desiring to inform them as to the number of people on board, kept their seats, but they let all their rifles protrude out of the windows. After remaining at the scene of the massacre for a few minutes, the driver put the whip to his horses and started for Crook City, which was the next stopping place. When they were about a quarter of a mile from the massacre site, the hay cutter heretofore referred to emerged from his hiding place, and, hailing the coach, got aboard. 3 miles further on, they came to Mr. May's mule train of 20 wagons. In camp, they learned from them that about half an hour previously, 7 Indians had attacked and tried to drive off the stock. A lively skirmishing fight ensued, but when the Indians saw that they were outnumbered, they retired without securing any of the mules or injuring anyone. The men belonging to the train refused to proceed further without additional arms or protection. Mr. May, yesterday evening, came to Deadwood and secured additional arms and men. On learning the facts about the massacre, 8 heroic men belonging to the train volunteered to go back to the scene of the massacre and bring in the bodies of the murdered men and women.